Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, Russell.
Yeah, what's happening over there?
Oh, you know, Relax Time Radio, 93.25 FM, Radio Thailand, 7:30 p.m. here on Thursday the 19th of December, 2019. We're joined in the studio this evening by our friendly guest here, Jamie Houston from Core Combat Chiang Mai. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you on the show, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
We're going to be kicking things off tonight with a little chit-chat with Jamie, talking one of your favourite topics, Russell.
Indeed.
You never stop banging on about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it can only be martial arts.
The martial arts.
Yeah, exactly. A huge advocates of the martial arts here on Relax Time Radio. Not only on our Thursday night show, but pretty much every night of the week.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's natural. It feels good to have you here, Jamie.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And we've got some songs Jamie has put together. He's,
we do.
you know, I don't want to say he's an aspiring DJ, but you could say that. I might get struck in the head if I say too much kind of jokes here tonight. But no, not at all, because that is exactly what we're trying to blow the lid off tonight, which is this whole idea of martial arts. What it is. What do you think it is? Okay, if I say martial arts to you, what's the first thing that comes to mind apart from Jean-Claude Van Damme?
A judo chop.
A judo chop.
Good answer.
Yeah, I mean, if I was 9, I'd think a Chinese burn, you know, that thing that you do on the forearms, and Hong Kong Fooey.
Yeah, absolutely.
The cartoon.
Number one super guy.
Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda is the recent incarnation of Hong Kong Fooey. Definitely. But there's this whole weird continuum of ideas, thoughts, concepts about martial arts and what it actually is. A lot of people, because a couple of years ago, you might remember when I was kind of like not as studly as I am today, and then I went and started training martial arts with these guys,
you know,
and I became like a ripped kind of stallion.
Right, and your self-image improved
self-image
greatly
improved,
at the same time.
Exactly. I was less of a
pushover, and
exactly, less of a bore, I was going to say. But anyway, so I say to people, oh yeah, I'm training kickboxing or I'm training martial arts. And they would have this look like this kind of look.
Yeah, there's sometimes a certain stigma
The
to
look
it
was,
as
I
well.
didn't know you were a violent thug, Paul. Like
Right.
that was the look they were giving me.
Right.
And I want to get Jamie's perspective on this.
I'd really like to hear
he's
that too, because that's a curious thing that people assume that you're aggressive or, enjoy fighting.
That's
if you
right.
will,
And I mean, this is it, because say in the last, 10 years particularly, but maybe the last 2 decades, there's been this rise of mixed martial arts on TV. Really big sport, really big growth. And a lot of everyday people are seeing this stuff, and they're seeing people with their faces smashed open and like blood pouring out. And, like,
I saw a guy get his ear knocked off.
It happens now and again. Yep.
Yeah, well, Jamie, he's got the scratches on the bed head of how many ears he's taken off this month.
They're not real, gentlemen. They're not real at all. It's plastic.
So this is the kind of thing that I was wanting to get the conversation started with, is what is the difference between, say, martial arts, as I might think of it, fighting or combat sports as something else, and then there's a whole range of other things like mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Tell us about these things, Jamie.
No, thank you very much. I mean, there's so many terms, and it is very confusing. And unfortunately, you find with the majority of people is they're not really fully informed of what these terms are and what they really mean. So it's one of those things that, I mean, I could go on about it for hours and hours, but...
you've got 90 minutes,
I've got 90 minutes, right?
I'm willing to drag you off after 25.
I'm going to have to go on double speed then, I think. Let's see. But I'm going to keep it as simple as I possibly can. So it's like this. I mean, the term martial arts, it's an umbrella term. It's a general term. And what that represents is any kind of combative form, like whether it be empty hands combat, hand to hand, foot to foot, so to speak, or it could be, traditional weaponry, so it could be sticks, blades, kind of improvised weaponry, etc. But the thing is, as I said, with martial arts, it's a general term. It's it's sorry, hit the mic there.
You just can't stop hitting stuff.
Can't help it. No, the hand just they go. You know, as soon as I start
it's that
talking about
proximity.
it,
It's just like, you know.
Got to put my feet flat on the ground so I don't throw any kicks. So the thing to bear in mind is, as I say, it's all the combative arts. It's anything that you can think of. So it all stems from traditional martial arts, TMA. So traditional martial arts could be things like, very old versions of Kung Fu from China, such as Wing Chun Kung Fu. It could be anything from there to, let's say, Kali from the Philippines, which is a war-based weapon system. And when I say weapons, I mean sticks, knives, long blades. Again, anything you get your hands on.
Or in the West, I think there's a pankration, the old Greek kind of
So
MMA
many.
kind of thing. It's
Kind
like
of, yes.
like a boxing, wrestling, eye
Right.
gouging, sort of
There's so
no
many.
holds barred.
That's
kind
right.
of
I mean,
thing.
the list goes on and on. And here's the thing: is you may have to ask yourself the question: why? Why is there so many? Well, the thing is, when it comes to combat, it's really ingrained in culture. So if you go back in time a little bit and look at the origins of where a lot of these systems come from, if we take something like Kung Fu, for example. So I mentioned Wing Chun. Wing Chun is known as the grandfather of Chinese martial arts, to use as an example. A little bit ironic because it was supposedly invented by a female. Which is, the story goes loosely that, it's someone in high society that was, kind of wary of threat of attack, mainly by males. And she came up with a system of how to defend herself in very close proximity against an opponent who may be stronger, faster, more powerful.
Because Wing Chun is kind of like a standing grappling style, right? Like, so you're not grappling on the ground. It's a standing thing, but it's kind of close proximity.
Correct.
And trapping and stuff
Yes,
like that.
that's
and
right.
Counter strikes.
Exactly. So with the Wing Chun, it's what we call the uncomfortable range, or we may also known as phone box fighting or phone booth fighting.
You're well acquainted with this, aren't you,
Indeed.
man?
Familiar with this one?
Well,
Fantastic.
he used to sleep in a phone box for a
Oh,
while.
wow.
He had a few
And
tough...
sometimes people would just come in,
Trying to use your phone.
unsolicited.
Anyway.
You have to defend your phone at all costs. I completely understand that one. But that's the thing, is it's that very close range. So if you take it in comparison to something like a more modern form of combat, let's say modern day boxing, where you're limited in your weaponry, but it's still that kind of close range striking. It's the range in between, let's say, long range punches like jabs and crosses, which are just straight shots. But it's the in between zone between that and the grappling range or the clinching range. So like you mentioned, trapping. So someone, if you're using it in a more self-defense application, someone grabbing your scruff of your neck or grabbing a wrist or whichever. The thing is, so there's many different systems, and they, again, go back in history, they are applicable for a certain time in history. So in other words, they would have been created for purpose, whether it be, let's say, it's more of like sword fighting or kendo, kempo, the large staff above the head, etc. There's loads of different systems. But here's the thing. In their day, they would have been incredibly efficient, effective, and arguably revolutionary. So therefore, what you find is that the people who've studied and developed these systems, which is rarely just one person, it would usually be a group, and then it goes on from there. They're onto something so good and so effective that they tend to want to treasure it and keep it, and they solidify it. They'll put it into a certain kind of
like a dogmatic tradition.
Yes, indeed.
Somewhat.
Definitely. It's almost like, well, they got it right. Why change it? They're really onto something here. We should honor that. We should preserve it, and we should maintain it. Now, hence why you have so many different systems, and hence why they can often be so different, because obviously they may have been formulated in different periods of history and in different locations, for, again, different purposes.
And maybe just sorry to jump in there, but
Sure.
I'm thinking about Muay Boran, Muay Thai,
Yes.
and Krabi Krabong sort of stuff, like
Very
maybe
much so.
that Muay Boran and the Krabi were interconnected, complementary warfighting
Certainly
styles or drills at least.
Yes.
And then over time there's a change.
Yes.
The applicability you're talking about, like they were generated in a particular epoch of time
Yes.
for a certain function.
Correct.
And when that has changed, you end up with an evolution to something like ring fighting Muay Thai, right? Like, because you're not having guys, you've got that sort of ornate,
Yes.
sort of ceremonial style of the Muay Boran, or
That's
a
right.
completely impractical Krabi stuff, like sword fighting, like in a ring, although I wouldn't mind watching it. But, sort of you end up with this modern ring sports, like combat sports,
Definitely.
which is what I kind of think a lot of people think of.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're talking there now about kind of an evolution of art into a sport. So if you take Muay Thai, and traditionally, again, even with Muay Thai, there's different branches of Muay Thai. So what we have today is the sport of Muay Thai. It's governed by certain rules and regulations, weight classes, etc. But even you go back into Muay Thai, like Muay Boran or ancient boxing, ancient Muay Thai, then there's different types. There's Muay Cow, there's Muay this, there's Muay that, and it's it's a knee fighter, elbow fighter, technical fighter, aggressive fighter, but it's locational as well. So if you have a look at where Muay Thai has come from, there are specific types of Muay Thai in different areas of the country. Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely regional. So what you have is some systems which don't develop into a sport. They just kind of stay as is, and they try to stay true to form as much as possible. You get some gyms that will try to adapt it to more kind of modern style of combat, and then you have others like Muay Thai or Taekwondo is another good example, where they've gone, okay, we can practice this as competition, as a sport.
Yeah.
Who's the best? When we take this system and we limit it to weight classes and rules, who's the best? And
it's funny because
Taekwondo
is kind of like a blend between, for me, something like a Muay Thai and like a Savate, like a French.
As similarities.
You're going for very targeted strikes. Correct. Primarily with the feet.
That's right. That's right.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I know you're a fan, yeah?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. We got some music in the box over there. Because Jamie's been like sweating over those selections all day.
Yeah.
He hasn't been training today. He's just been
that's all that's been on my mind all day. It's just those selections.
His playlist.
Jamie, why don't you tell us what we're going to hear?
Well, let's see. I chose
that first one.
The first one was what was the first one?
You're terrible, Russell. You put the guy on the spot.
Yeah,
Can't Hold Us. I think I chose.
Welcome to the hot seat.
Yeah, it was Return of the Mac. I think it was Can't Hold Us. I think I chose for the first one. Great tune. It's one of the ones from my playlist, and it really gets me going. It gets the feet moving. So
I can attest to that. I think I've trained to that about 15 times at least. You just play that in the gym, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, yes, yeah. It's one of the favorites of the gym, definitely.
Crank it up, man, because we're going to get get sweating over on this side of the glass.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Hey, look, before we do that song, though, if you're out there listening tonight and you would like to contribute to the show or ask our guest, Jamie Houston, a question about martial arts or relate one of your own stories, you can do so. You can call 053-276-793. That is the number. You can find me on Facebook, him on Facebook. You can find Relax Time Radio on Facebook. And you can also watch it on YouTube if you're feeling so inclined. I like to usually do it all at once.
Yeah, me too.
On my nights off. All of it. I'm ringing people, watching stuff, got my feet up.
Fine-tuning that radio.
Exactly. And I got all happening in the car, listening on the radio, of course. We're going to be back straight after this song.
We'll be back.
Thanks. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Yeah.
Oh, you always do that.
Yeah.
You wait for me to say it, and then you say it. This guy, I tell you. You just heard Can't Hold Us, Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, as programmed by our guest here in the studio tonight, Jamie Houston, martial arts practitioner and fight coach from Core Combat Chiang Mai, joining us here in the studio. We're talking martial arts. Russell?
Yeah, we are.
You want to put him on the grill?
Yeah, I'd like to. I was wondering about, as warfare and combat have evolved, for lack of a better word, over time, how has it changed the evolution of the martial arts themselves? I mean, now, recent developments are clearly the mixed martial arts, but apart from competitive sport, what really is the role of the martial arts in the world today and, as compared to before?
That's a good question. Well, I think really, what changed things dramatically was gunpowder. Really, it was the ability to create, weaponry. It's the guns, it's the bombs, the cannons, etc. I think that changed everything because, for the longest time it was all hands on. Really,
right.
Literally, hand to hand. With obviously the swords and everything else, bow and arrow, etc. So I think that changed things dramatically. But if we fast forward to how things are now. I feel as though that in general people have really lost touch on how to protect themselves physically.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's, the world has changed dramatically. With supposedly the top of the food chain, with the predators, etc. But we're not predatory anymore. In terms of society, things have changed dramatically.
Highway robbers are gone, and
right, exactly. But it's just the civilization thing, I think, as well, is changed things a lot. So now I find that you mentioned the military, even the military, the hand-to-hand techniques. I feel as though they dropped in their ability for quite a significant period of time. Becoming reliant on certain systems like judo, for example. We take the US, which is, there's nothing wrong with judo. Judo is an incredible system, but in that kind of high intensity kind of warfare ground, it may not be the sole option to go for. It's limited in certain areas. And if we take that and apply that to general kind of self-defense these days, one thing I teach myself. I teach striking to fighters, but I also teach combatives, also known as self-protection, self-defense, to civilians, but also to operatives as well from time to time. And on the most part, what I find is that the mindset is gone. People don't have kind of awareness for danger anymore. If we take the physical aspect out of things for a second, the psychology is all over the place. People are, like I say, not aware. They're in denial of what dangers are around them.
There's also an illusion. Sorry to add to this, but there's an illusion that authorities of some kind are going to come to your aid if you ever have a problem. Like if you're walking down the street and something happens.
That's right.
There's some sort of confrontational situation.
I've already called the cops.
Yeah, they're going to, and not only that, they're going to be there and somehow fix all your problems, and you're not going to get hurt during in the interim.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So
no, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's a case of there's an element of entitlement going on. There's absolute denial going on, and there's just lack of practice. We're just on the whole in modern day society, we're not predatory anymore.
And I see also, because I keep an eye on this kind of stuff, I have an interest in it as well, is the whole thing with headphones and phones and situational awareness. I guess it's called generally, where people are sort of walking around on their phones like a zombie, and someone just comes up and king hits them or robs them, snatches, or pushes them in front of a train or whatever, crazy stuff. So I mean, you can train people to have improved situational awareness, for want of a better term.
110%. I mean, that's where it starts. If I'm teaching people about self-protection, it starts right at the beginning with psychology and appropriate mindset and awareness skills. Because, for example, you talk about people being switched off with music, etc. In the combative circles, we would call that a code white, which is also nicknamed victim state, by law enforcement, military, etc. And the reason it's called that is basically what code white is. It's just a complete lack of awareness. You're totally switched off, or your focus is solely into one thing and your peripheral is completely gone. Peripheral vision, your other senses are just not in tune to your surroundings. But again, that's nicknamed as victim state because the vast majority of people who've been attacked in the street, for example, most of them are in this
They're
state.
exhibiting this to someone who is not in that state, someone who can see this kind of stuff.
Correct. And it sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, just for a second, walk down the street, walk into a shopping mall and see everybody who's walking around with kind of a question mark shaped back, looking into their phone, and they're bumping into doors, they're bumping into each other, completely unaware.
They're bumping into me sometimes.
Yes, indeed.
Well.
And worse.
Yes, indeed. But that's the problem. So if you take it in terms of an opportunist looking for an easy payday, to rob someone, they're not looking for a challenge. They're looking for the weak. Again, I keep mentioning the word predatory. I mean, if you think of it back in the day, look at it now. With if lions hunting a herd of buffalo, they don't go for the big, strong one of the pack. They go for the weak, slow ones, the ones that are unaware and unable to defend themselves. Very similar mentality with people as well, day to day. They're looking for the easy option. So the first thing, if I can give any advice to anybody, it's wake up and look around you. Literally, before you step out the front door, switch on that level of awareness, a heightened level of awareness where, you're saying to yourself, right, I'm stepping out the door now. not being paranoid, not being fearful, just being awake, being aware. It's the same rules as if you're driving a car or driving a bike
Right.
in Thailand. Not meaning to speak ill of anything, but the roads can be risky sometimes, like anywhere. If you're unaware and you're looking at your phone, you're going to have a crash, or not going to, but the
Chances are
probability
high,
goes
yeah,
up. Exactly, it's the exact same thing when it comes to self-protection. And another thing as well is trying to remove a certain kind of let's say naivety or ignorance on what is perceived as safe. So to use your example of, it's illegal, so I would call a police officer to help me. Well, put that into reality. If someone just blocks your path completely unexpectedly, are you going to have time to draw that phone and make that phone call and then sit tight and wait for the person to come, if they come at all? It's just not realistic. But then, so it's a case of getting your mind in the right place, getting your awareness in the right state, and then from there it's looking for these kind of preemptive cues, and these things can absolutely be learned. People display certain kind of physical cues when they're thinking a certain way or when they're feeling a certain way. Same idea as if you go into a public place, let's say you go into a bar or something like that. If the bar is friendly or not. You don't have to walk in and ask the question.
Pretty much
right?
within 5 seconds.
Exactly. And this is what I'm talking about. So you could walk into a bar completely unaware and have no clue, and you might walk into a happy place or an unhappy place, right? Yeah. But if you're awake, like you say, you walk in, you'll know instantaneously. You don't have to walk around and ask questions. You can feel it, right? It's like, this intuition.
Let's get out of here.
Correct.
We're in the wrong place.
Or this is an awesome place. Let's stick around. So that's what it's all about. We all have it. It's innate, we can perceive energy and other people's vibes very well. We just need to switch it on. Doing that instantaneously reduces the chances of someone attacking you. A, you'll be aware. B, you're going to personify an extra level of confidence that you would not personify if your focus is just gone. It's focused into one thing, like a phone. So
I know you've done a lot of training with women.
Yes.
Women's self-defense stuff.
Yes.
It's kind of related to what you're talking about, I feel, in urban settings where you might be walking around and not necessarily aware of risks. So you've done a lot of that stuff with women?
Absolutely.
And they've responded well to it, like they've
absolutely
got that increased confidence, that increased
absolutely
skills.
It tends to be one or two things, especially these days when I'm teaching combatives. I get a lot of requests for private tuition, from females more than males. And I hate to say it, but the majority of females that are asking for tuition, they've been through something. Something's happened to them, and it can be a small thing like an off comment which offended them, to a more significant event. Maybe a physical event and mental, of course, as well. So they'll approach me with, I don't want this to happen again. What do I do about this? Or again, it's just a complete lack of awareness. Like they don't know, and they just don't feel safe, and they want to cover it. And it's wonderful, whether it's male or female, when you get someone who has, let's say a moment of clarity or realization that, hey, I could do better here. I could learn to look after myself here. Or it could be conquering a fear or processing a trauma. That's quite common when it comes to self-defense training, combatives training. Then seeing people flourish is just a wonderful thing. It's incredible.
I think you've tapped on something there, which I think in society generally, there's a really huge fear of physical contact.
Yes.
Like if I bump into you, that's not a good thing, right? There's something that's not going to be welcomed. And people have they seem to have a deep ingrained fear about the prospect of physical confrontation as well. Right. Do you think that learning, how would I say it, learning to be able to kind of take care of yourself, to dish it out, so to speak, if necessary, helps you to actually be safer? Like, hugely. You know what I mean? Because people can sort of read it on you.
Absolutely.
I always say you can pick someone that's done martial arts, right, purely by the way they walk.
Yeah.
100%, right?
No, that's a good point.
You can see it. Like you can see, okay, that person, I'm
person's
watching
a police
how
officer,
that
a fighter, a soldier. It's true.
You can spot it in a second, like someone who knows how to move their body
self-assurance,
around.
it's a confidence. It's I completely agree. It's Yeah, sorry.
What about older people? I was just going to ask, because we're talking about different genders, and before we jump into your second musical selection, but do you think age is a barrier for people? I don't want to open the Pandora's box of kids, because we all know that there's a ton of benefits for kids getting involved with martial arts training.
Yeah.
But what about older people? Like, is there any real age where it might become difficult to do martial arts training, or counterproductive, or not helpful, or you're going to have too many injuries? Or, I mean, what's your experience in that? Because I know some of our listeners out there are in an older part of the demographic.
Yes.
So they might be thinking, oh, I can't do that, or it's not, it's, you know, it's for young people.
No, that's a really good question, that, and that's something that we get asked quite a bit. So what I'll say is, you know, in terms of kind of a general answer for that, is that there should be no limitation whatsoever. You should not allow anything that you perceive to be a limitation to stop you from any kind of training. So age, for example, or maybe it's a certain physical disability, or it's a kind of a mental drawback, or you know, lack of physical fitness, whatever it might be, whatever might be slowing a person down. It's not enough of an excuse to not go forward and get some training. I mean, granted, what you have to look at then is what kind of training are they looking for. So the question you need to ask yourself is, you know, some people will come in and they'll say, oh, I want to learn how to fight. Well, what does that mean exactly? You want to be a sport fighter? You want to look like you can fight? You want to defend on the street?
You can learn how to fight and lose, right? You can get knocked out. Like, I mean, anyone can learn that. You just need to step up. And
here's where it gets complicated a little bit, is just because you may be, let's say, a martial artist. Let's say, you know, going into that term martial arts again, let's say more specifically, someone is a kickboxer, right? So they're trained in, you know, a certain way of combat, which is based around a sport. It's based around rules. Correct. Now, that doesn't mean that you can fight on the street. It doesn't even mean that you can protect yourself better on the street. It may mean that you can be more athletic, that you know how to, you know, throw strikes and block, etc. But it doesn't address very key elements of like self-protection, such as the fear element. Okay, it's the unknown. If you're preparing for a fight, then you know it's coming. You can get ready, and you know there's rules and there's weight classes and etc. etc. In the street, it will come at the worst time. You know, and let's get a little bit in further. Let's say you need to pee. Right? Someone approaches you and you're dying to go to the bathroom, and then it happens. Oh, damn, that's a factor I didn't think of.
A glass into your face.
Yeah, exactly.
At that moment.
You haven't had a good night's sleep. You ate too much at lunch, or, you know, you're feeling unwell that day. These are all factors. Also, it's the hit of adrenaline. It's the fear. All this changes things. I've seen people who are very accomplished sports fighters, boxers or whatever, fall apart when they've been in an altercation on the street that hasn't even been physical. You know, they burst into tears. That's not me mocking them. That's me kind of highlighting the point that it doesn't address the street fighting or the street defense aspect. Whereas
it's funny, because I used to know a whole bunch of guys that were really fantastic street fighters,
right?
But then they got into Muay Thai ring fighting, and they got knocked out like 15 times in a row. You know, but they were just red hot street fighters.
That's right.
Like the worst, you know, like really, really expert at inflicting damage.
Exactly. It's a
different mentality. It's a different way.
It's completely different. I mean, again, with combatives, you know, I'm teaching civilians who maybe have had no form of training whatsoever to, again, first and foremost about, you know, the awareness and keeping themselves safe, how to avoid danger, how to escape danger. That's the way to do it. It's not to, you know, steam in and get the job done. Is, well, no, you want to avoid it and get away from it. But if it comes to you know, being physical, you're cornered, you have to do something, then the movements that we're teaching are absolutely devastating. They're effective, and that's the point. Is you're not trying to hurt someone, you're trying to go home safe, and that's the difference. So you may pitch one of my guys who's learned combatives for a couple of years and pitch them with a trained fighter, put them in a street fight. I might put my money on the combatives guys, to be honest with you, even though they're not athletes and they haven't trained all their life or whatever, but it's a very specific, focused type of training. It's completely different. This is where it gets complicated and a bit interesting.
All right. Speaking of interesting, we're going to jump into this second track, Russell, and then I think we're going to come back and have a little bit more. We're a little over time talking to Jamie, but that's okay. And I thought we could talk a little bit more about how people might want to get involved in martial arts training, some practical, realistic ways that they could go about doing that before we say goodnight to you, sir.
Wonderful.
All right, welcome back. Relax Time Radio. We've got Jamie Houston here in the studio with us from Core Combat Chiang Mai. We've been talking martial arts. We've been talking combat sports. We've been talking all the good things here
Yeah.
tonight. And we're going to wrap up our time with Jamie. Just if people are listening out there, what are the options for people that want to get involved? Because, okay, we've been talking a little bit in our conversation about sort of striking-based martial arts. There are other styles.
Oh, yeah.
And because I know that in Thailand we've had, obviously an extremely strong tradition of Muay Thai, and it's a very obvious kind of starting point. But, some people might want to train that. Other people might want something else. What are the
Absolutely.
options for people in Chiang Mai?
Well, in Chiang Mai, what a lot of people don't realize is that there's a wealth of options here with martial arts. People think Thailand, they think Muay Thai immediately. Or, they go around a bit and they'll see a lot of Taekwondo schools and things like that, which is fine. But they don't realize that there's a lot more to offer. So to give you a few examples, I think that the first thing you have to do, if you're listening now and you're thinking of getting into it, you need to try and answer the question of what's the point? What are you doing it for? Is it to get fit? Is it to learn how to street fight and protect yourself in the street? Is it to compete in sport? Is it to look good, etc.? You have to kind of have that conversation with yourself first. But then aside from that, in terms of available options, if you take self-defense, we have combatives. There's other places that have combatives as well. Which is the street fighting stuff. Then you have, of course, Muay Thai. There's plenty of Muay Thai out there, which is going to give you a hell of a workout. It's it's still holding strong with its traditional values of its heritage, which is quite fascinating. Trick is finding a good gym at that point, without naming names, of course. But it's
kind of like horses for courses, right? You kind
bit.
of have to match up the spirit or the tone of the gym.
Exactly. What you have to do is don't think about what does the gym look like, how many certificates are on the wall, or this, that, and the other. Kind of disregard all that. My advice to you would be walk in, have a chat with them, maybe even try just one session or a week of sessions, maybe, give it a chance, and then you'll soon feel if it feels right for you or not. It might be that the vibe of the gym just doesn't agree with you, or the system, it just isn't right, but give it a chance. But aside from that, again, you've got the Muay Thai for striking, you've got Taekwondo, but then you've got these beautiful systems such as Silat from Indonesia, which again is a war-based system. It's a stunning system. Look out for movies like The Raid, for example, which showcases Silat beautifully. Then you have Kali, which is from the Philippines. You have Panatukan, which is an empty hand version of Kali, which is basically everything you can do with a knife, you can do with a stick, you can pretty much do without a weapon as well. You can improvise and turn your hands into the tools. But there's
What
so
about
many.
stuff like jiu-jitsu? I mean, 'cause that's kind of got on people's radar a bit through mixed martial arts, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. There's different kinds of jiu-jitsu as well. So you have, like a more traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, which is, I would say, karate-based. But you've got, it's an elements of striking, of takedowns, of some groundwork, which would be grappling. Then you've got the more famous Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which, like you mentioned, got really famous when the UFC started to build up, because what they figured out is, okay, of all the systems, to combine Muay Thai striking or kickboxing with, let's say, judo throws or American wrestling, for example, for takedowns, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the groundwork, it makes you a very good overall fighter and an all-rounder. So the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is focusing solely on the ground. It's a beautiful system. There's a lot to be learned, and it's fantastic for fitness.
And it's a non-contact martial art, right? I mean, there's physical contact, but it's not striking.
Exactly, non-impact. So there's no punches or kicks, or necessarily no takedowns. You would start in certain positions on the ground and work your way from there. So if the punches and kicks aren't really your thing, or the throws aren't your thing, then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu could be perfect for you. But again, I would argue, and this may raise a few eyebrows, I wouldn't recommend it for street defense. I hate to say this.
You've started a few fights like that, haven't you? When you've been on the ground, like with your legs up, but it didn't really help you, did it?
I mean, the results weren't much different, to be honest.
Standing up, lying down,
If I may, Jamie, I came across a book. It was Bruce Lee's Guide to Self-Defense or something of that nature. And it was illustrated with black and white photos for every...
I think I know the book.
For every move, And I couldn't help but notice that half of these involved a blow to the groin. Literally. I mean, the whole book was just full of Bruce delivering
Hitting the
blows
groin.
to the groin. And I just thought, is that half of it? You know, when it comes to
That's how we met.
Come on, now we're on air,
but seriously,
please.
what you know, as you said, you teach a lot of people self-defense.
Yes.
And you know, that's
Is that like the crescendo of? 50,
That's all it
50?
is. That's all I teach. Is just kick the groin and run away.
But is it? I mean, it's effective.
Oh,
We
yeah.
all know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
definitely.
I mean, if if you just had to learn one thing, you think that to get out of a jam, a tight spot.
Yes, I mean, I would suggest when it comes to defense, it's like this. The way I teach self-defense is I teach what we call worst-case scenario self-defense. So you're against an opponent that, an attacker, should I say, that may be stronger than you, faster than you, more experienced, etc. What then? But we also look at what if pain isn't a factor. For example, if you're punching someone in the nose, you hit them in the nose and the tears will come in the eyes and the pain will stop them.
Right.
Well, no, not necessarily. Like with someone like me, I've had my nose broken twice, and I'm quite confident that I can keep fighting if my nose is smashed.
Yeah.
That's not going to stop me. So also, let's say, I'm not going to use myself as an example here, but if someone is intoxicated, really high, and they just don't feel pain, they don't feel fear.
That could be me.
Yeah.
Indeed. So then what? So what you're looking at then is you're looking at targets which are effective against those people. So what we tend to say as an example would be soft target, hard weapon, soft target. So if you take the groin, that's a soft target. Give it a boot. A good old kick in the gonads,
Right.
male or female, for that matter, it's going to hurt. And
Right.
there's going to be like an involuntary response. The person might lower their hands. So Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee's system was Jeet Kune Do. It was a system that he devised himself. I'm an instructor of Jeet Kune Do. I teach it myself. And one of Bruce Lee's kind of main methodologies was sort of what we call PIA, which is progressive indirect attack, also known as feinting. You kind of trick your way in. So it might be that you kick towards the groin so you can actually get an eye jab.
Yeah.
Again, you can punch someone in the jaw or you can poke them in the eyes, and you poke in the eyes, you can't see. Therefore, it doesn't matter how tough or determined the attacker is. If they can't see, then it puts you at an advantage right away.
Right.
Or the other way around, again, using Bruce Lee as the example, he might feint to the eyes and then kick to the groin because that's a good place to kick if you want to stop someone in their tracks. But there's others as well. Like throat, for example, is a cracking way to stop someone in their tracks.
Yeah, nothing like a good throat kick to really freshen things up.
Exactly. If you can reach that high, that is. But Bruce Lee's a very fascinating one. I'm going to touch on it very, very briefly. It's just what I would say to you is if you want to learn about philosophy, history of martial arts, and effective combat, Bruce Lee is someone you should really take seriously because, again, just look at all the modern day fighters. All the modern day greats will tell you that they idolize Bruce Lee, and there's good reason for it. So that's someone that you should really look into.
He was a philosopher and a poet, and
he
very accomplished artist of life, and not
Indeed.
just a martial artist. Jamie, thank you very much. I think we're going to have to get Jamie back to have a bit of a Bruce Lee night for
Let's
you
do that.
and
Happy
your
to.
benefit, Russell. Thank you very much, Jamie. It's been a great pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
And Russell, what you got lined up over there? You got some big boom bang hits?
I'm not sure I'm ready to get into it, but
Okay, let's keep it a mystery for the listeners.
well, I got 3 in a row by Roxette, and you know why. But maybe we'll explain it when we come back.
Let's just enjoy the music of Roxette. Let's jump into those. We'll say goodbye to Jamie. And
Thanks
we'll
a lot,
be back.
Jamie.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.